can begin. All right, so very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can see me and also hear me. All right, so if you can't, you can, I hope you can. I hope there are no technical problems. So, right, so with me today is my colleague, Cherry, and myself. My name is Professor Dennis Tay, and I am going to talk to you today about our Doctor of Applied Language Sciences, or DALS for short, degree program at the Faculty of Humanities, Hong Kong Polytechnic University. So thank you again for taking time off your Saturday afternoons to join us. So the purpose of this talk really is to give you basically facts, right? Factual information so that you can kind of make an informed choice about whether or not this program is likely to be suitable for your objectives. And throughout the talk, you're welcome to raise questions, preferably in the chat box, so that after the talk, we can answer the questions in the chat box. And also, you can also switch on your microphones, and then we can have a good chat session after that. So this presentation is not going to last very long, maybe about 30 to 40 minutes, and I will devote the rest of the time to answer whatever questions you may have. Right, so let's begin. So again, this is Doctor of Applied Language Sciences, or DALS for short, and the program code is 03002 when you're registering. Okay, so basically, without saying, I guess a lot of us know that PolyU is a very recognized, internationally distinguished university, and also the field of arts and humanities in which DALS falls under, right, is ranked considerably high in Asia and as well as throughout the world. As you can see, we are ranked 16th in Asia, and the linguistic discipline, which most of the DALS teachers and professors fall under, is actually ranked number 55 in the world. So that's pretty high. So you can rest assured that you are in good hands, and we have a very strong academic reputation. Okay, so the philosophy and aims of the program is quite concise. Basically, we actually have a program motto. It is to learn, to apply, to administer. And the aim of this program, broadly speaking, is to help nurture and develop future leaders like you guys in language-related professions. So it's a very broad statement. Language-related professions does not narrowly define only things like teaching, or a lot of our students are actually practicing university teachers, but that doesn't mean that the program is only limited to these people, because a lot of our students are also working professionals in a variety of disciplines and industries, hoping to upgrade their qualifications. And I'm sure that some of you in the audience today also fall into this category. Okay, so we talked about our 3 I's and 4 focus areas. So this is just a way to kind of like capture the essence or the main characteristics of our program. We are interdisciplinary, and what this means, as you will see later on, is that actually DALS, although it is hosted by the Faculty of Humanities, but it also has subjects contributed to by our colleagues from the Department of Computing and also several other departments across the university, which gives it an interdisciplinary flavor, which is very important in language sciences of today. It is cross-linguistic. It is not just focused on a particular language like English or Chinese or Cantonese, but it is actually looking at language itself across cultures and languages, right? So cross-linguistic, cross-cultural, and we integrate international perspectives as well as local context. And I think this point is most evident from the fact that our faculty members are diverse across many countries and regions around the world. So it's kind of like giving our program also a very interesting international perspective. At the same time, we are grounded in the local Hong Kong and Chinese context as well. Okay, we believe in close interaction with and dialogue between academics and practitioners. So actually, a lot of our students are considered practitioners in the sense that they are perhaps teachers, perhaps lecturers in the universities, perhaps they are working in fields like human resources, advertising and corporate communication and things of that nature. So we believe in this interaction and learning from one another, and not just in a unidirectional way from academia to practice, but it's interdirectional. And of course, the program is kind of like the subjects in the program are packaged in terms of 4 what we call focus areas. And within these focus areas, our students have a broad variety to choose from. As I'll talk about later on, you will have to fulfill some elective subjects. And these elective subjects can be drawn from any of these 4 focus areas, which are namely language education, and as well as intercultural and professional communication, translation and interpretation, as well as speech sciences, language processing, and cognition. And each of these 4 areas are represented by respective experts and subjects. Okay, so these are just some facts, right? I won't spend a lot of time because these are kind of like just number crunching, and you can see them as well on the program leaflet, which is available on our faculty website. If you search PolyU FH DELS, you can find all these information on the program leaflet, right? So very briefly, our program requires 48 credits for graduation, and most of the time, each course is 3 credits, right? So these 48 credits actually breaks down to 2 components. DELS, although it's classified as a taught postgraduate program, but there is also a significant research component involved. As you can see, 24 credits, which is half the credits, goes to coursework, and the other half is actually focused on your thesis, right? So there is also an early exit option. So students who perhaps, for instance, find that they are not able to fulfill all these credits for whatever reasons, right, can apply for an early exit whereby you graduate with a Master of Arts in Applied Language Research Studies, and that requires 33 credits, right? So the fees is 6.9K per credit, which works out to be about 330K for the whole program in Hong Kong dollars. Okay. So like I said, it's hosted by the Faculty of Humanities, which is essentially, us, right? And then, however, the program is contributed to by various departments. As I mentioned just now, Department of Computing, and also Department of Chinese and Bilingual Studies, as well as Department of English and Communication and English Language Center. So this is what I meant just now by interdisciplinary. Okay, and there are 2 modes of study. Essentially, it's just the distinction is between full-time and part-time. So traditionally, for instance, we have found that a lot of, if you are stationed in Hong Kong, if you're a Hong Kong local, most of the time, for instance, you may be part-time because you already have a job and you are studying while you are still working. So that will classify you as part-time. And then if you are from the mainland of China, most of the time you will be a full-time student because a lot of our students are actually studying, while, studying full-time, basically, focusing on the studies. So of course there are exceptions, but generally that's how it has been over the past few years. And for full-time, it's basically 4 years, and part-time is 5 years. And this is what I would say the recommended duration. There are students who can finish earlier, and there are students who have to, delay a little bit. So students who wish to extend the studies beyond this so-called normal duration can submit such requests, and most of the time we grant it. Okay, so for the most recent intake, we have 24 students, so it's unlikely to vary by too much this year as well. And the minimum instruction is English throughout the program. Okay, these are, I'm introducing some of the people who are responsible for the program. Okay, so this is my colleague, Professor Zhu Xinhua, who is a committee chair, and myself, Dennis Tay, I'm the program leader. And we are supported by a cast of, professionals, academics across the departments that I mentioned, right? So I won't introduce everybody one by one, but essentially you can see these are our colleagues who are also in charge of the program, together with Xinhua and myself. Okay, so curriculum structure. So again, these are kind of like facts, very specific information, which I will go through fairly briefly. Okay, so the coursework component, as I mentioned, DELS is classified as a TPG or taught postgraduate program, as opposed to an RPG or research postgraduate program. So these are the 2 main categories in PolyU. So for TPG programs, the coursework component is higher. As you can see, 50% of the credits of DELS will be devoted to coursework. Okay, so that means 24 credits because you need 48 for graduation. So 50% is 24. And among these 24, as I said, each subject is usually 3 credits. So therefore, you will have to take 8 subjects, and of which 2 are compulsory, I will show them later, and 6 are electives, which you can choose from the 4 focal areas that I mentioned just now, right? So that's perhaps a lot of information, but if you are a little bit confused, that's all right, because later on we have a lot of time for Q&A, and I can slowly address your questions one by one. Okay, so that's the coursework. And of course, like I said, because although it's a TPG program, but of course, being a doctoral program, research is inevitably a huge component, and that would take up the other 24 credits, right? Of which is divided into Thesis 1 and Thesis 2. Okay, Thesis 1 is a shorter version whereby the main focus is to help students develop like a decent research proposal or a pilot study, right? Which takes up 9 credits. And that will be the foundation from which students can then move on to Thesis 2, right? Which is a substantial full thesis. And that will take up 15 credits. Okay, so after thesis 1, students will undergo an oral examination, right, to show that they are ready to do thesis 2. So it's kind of like a continuous process. And altogether, if you fulfill everything, you have 48 credits, and then you graduate with a DELS degree. Okay, so the coursework, as I mentioned, now coursework basically means you come to the classroom, and then it's just like a typical lecture kind of setting, and there would be 6 compulsory credits, which means 2 subjects. Okay, and 18 elective credits, which means 6 subjects. Okay, so it's classified into, as I mentioned, the basic categories, the foundation subjects. Okay, you have 2 compulsory subjects. So these are basically what everybody has to take: trends in applied language sciences, research methods, and you can choose to take other subjects that are spread across a wide range of applied language sciences. Okay, for instance, you have linguistic theory, discourse analysis, corpus linguistics, social linguistics, grammar, and you have other subjects in the 4 focal areas, right? Language education, psycholinguistics, right? Communication, media, translation, interpretation, computational linguistics, data analytics, speech processing, and so on and so forth. So as you can see, it's a very comprehensive, full-ranging program. And the biggest strength, in my opinion, is that students can freely permutate or choose between any of these without any restriction. So you really can build up your own specialization based on your own interest and expertise. Okay, so for thesis, right? So that was coursework I mentioned. So coursework, usually students will kind of like finish the bulk of the coursework before they move on to focus entirely on their thesis, which kind of like makes sense, right? So as I mentioned just now, the DELS thesis is divided into thesis 1 and 2. Thesis 1 being like a foundation, like a pilot, right? Laying the grounds for eventual thesis 2. And if you're a full-time student, you will usually finish it thesis 1 within 1 semester and thesis 2 within 2 semesters. So the whole research component, if you're a full-time student, will take about 1.5 years, all right? And if you're a part-time, then you just multiply by 2 accordingly. Okay, so this, again, I emphasize, is what we call a normal period. So some students who are very, very, they can manage the time very well, they make good progress, they can actually do it faster, and vice versa. Some students, for personal reasons or professional reasons, right, they may have to delay the progress, but that is usually fine. Of course, having said that, the university does stipulate what is called a maximum completion period. So you can extend, but you cannot go beyond a maximum time frame, which I will talk about soon. Okay, so that will be, so what I've covered is essentially the 2 main branches, right? So coursework and your thesis. So together they take up 50% each of your DELS program. Okay, and then beyond these curricular subjects, we also have academic support subjects, which are not credit bearing. So when we say credit bearing, what we mean is contributing towards the 48 credits that you need, right? But over and above that, we have extra subjects which serve the purpose of polishing our students' ability to communicate in English, right? Both in terms of writing, as well as presentation, because these are essential skills for any kind of doctoral level study. So these are, first of all, optional, and second of all, tailor-made for DELS students, for you guys. Okay, so these are advanced academic English literacy and advanced academic, both are called advanced academic literacy, but one of them is focusing on presentation, the other one is on reading and writing. So these are the faculty's efforts to support our students, to give them extra help where necessary, but I emphasize that it's optional. Okay, but they are very popular with our students. Okay, so when you study at DELS, a lot of times people may kind of like describe the postgraduate or doctoral process as a very isolating process, because a lot of times you are kind of like working by yourself with a supervisor. But at PolyU and FH, we believe in integrating students into the wider research academic community. So if you join us, you actually will be in a very conducive climate, because there are many opportunities for you to engage in academic activities with our leading research centers and global partners. So the Faculty of Humanities has at least the following internationally recognized research centers, right, such as IRC for the Advancement of Health Communication, and then the Research Center for Language, Cognition, and Neuroscience for Professional Communication. And then we have partnerships with, for example, Peking University to do Chinese linguistics and also Chinese history and culture. So what I'm trying to say is that we actively try to kind of like engage our students, right, Dell students as well as our PhD students, to participate in a lot of these activities organized by these programs. And from these research centers, our students draw a lot of research inspiration as well for their own careers and for their own thesis. So do not miss this opportunity to be integrated into our academic community, which is very important. Okay, so now something that a lot of us will be quite interested about is scholarships, right? So for DELS, something unique about DELS is that rather than offer cash as scholarships, we offer a kind of like a rebate, or rather we deduct the number of credits you need to pay for, right? So the scholarship comes in terms of credit deduction. Okay, so we have two kinds of scholarships, entry and post-entry. So I'm going to talk about entry scholarship first, which is based on, as you can see here, academic merit of your application, right? So this includes things like your universities that you came from, the GPA that you got, okay, as well as research / professional qualifications or recognition. So this includes things like maybe you have publications, right? Or maybe you have some kind of professional certification that is relevant to DELS, or you are recognized, perhaps you won some awards, or you are contributing, making significant contributions to society, things of that nature, right? And also the interview and written test performance. So DELS applicants, if you are shortlisted, you will attend an interview with a panel, as well as a very brief written test. So your performance in these aspects will also be considered. And if you are outstanding, then you may be considered for a scholarship, whereby there will be a maximum total of 24 scholarships credits to be awarded. So if you remember, let me go back to the credit fees. We mentioned just now that each credit is 6.9K. So in other words, 6.9K, I'm just doing some calculation, 6.9 times 24, which means there's a maximum of 165,000 Hong Kong dollars in terms of tuition fee rebate up for grabs. Okay, of course, it's very unlikely that one person will get all these credits, right? So some historical data. So for instance, in the 2021-22 cohort, one student was given a 6-credit scholarship. So that's almost like $13,000. And then 3 students were given each a 3 credits scholarship. So it's actually quite a considerable amount. And the criteria are very transparent. So we do encourage, and one more thing, you don't have to apply for this. So you'll be automatically considered. Okay, so that's good news for a lot of our students. Okay, we also have a post-entry scholarship. And what this means is that the selection criteria is based on your performance in the DELS course. So this is considered after you start the program. Okay, so the criteria again includes, like I mentioned, academic merit, okay, your qualifications and publications and things like that. But also you have to achieve a GPA. GPA is basically a cumulative score of your performance of 3.6 or above, right? So 3.6, if I'm not wrong, is about an A- average, B+ to A- average. Okay, no, not B+, I think at least A- average, okay, or above, after completing all subjects, excluding thesis 1. So it's all your coursework subjects, as well as being able to complete all subjects within the normal time frame. So in other words, you may not be eligible if you apply for extensions excessively, okay? And your chief supervisor, I'll talk about supervision later on, and maybe in the Q&A, we can also talk more about the nature of supervision, right? Your supervisor has to support you, to endorse you, and if you fulfill this criteria, then you get a post-entry scholarship, which again is in the form of credit tuition reduction. Okay, and another way in which our students have found ways to kind of like supplement their income during their studies is to enroll in what we call the postgraduate studentship scheme. Okay, so remember that DELS is hosted by the Faculty of Humanities, and the Faculty of Humanities is comprised of these academic departments: Chinese and Bilingual Studies, or CBS, Chinese Culture, the Confucius Institute of Hong Kong, and English and Communication. So our students can apply to be teaching assistants, okay, to any of these departments subject to their requirements. So every semester, Dell students can submit their CV, right, to us, and then we will consider suitable Dell students to serve as TAs, right, mostly to undergraduate classes. So this is a very attractive scheme because, first of all, it is a very financially lucrative scheme because you get a monthly stipend of about 18.1K per month, okay? And second of all, it gives you teaching experience that is crucial if your aim is to pursue an academic career after your Dell's program. So nowadays, to get an academic job, right, it's important to show evidence of teaching experience even before you actually get a job. So that's just the way things are nowadays. So a lot of our students benefit a lot from this scheme. So these are just many of the ways that we try to help our students. Okay, so some kind of like talking about what you can do with a Dell's degree. So first of all, Dell's is recognized or categorized rather as level 7, which is the highest level, in what the Hong Kong government calls the qualifications framework. So this is basically a kind of like a list of programs that the Hong Kong government recognizes to be valid, right, for professional purposes. You can check out the registration number if you're interested and look at this website. But what this means is that Dell's is actually considered to be equivalent to for example, like a PhD degree or any other doctoral level degree that you can get. For example, an EDD, education, Doctor of Education. It's considered equivalent by the Hong Kong government. And of course, it's also recognized by the Chinese Ministry of Education, right, if you are from the mainland of China, right? So this one is contingent because, as we know, for the past few years, we have been plagued by COVID-19. There have been a lot of issues with hybrid learning, online learning. And of course, this is the official statement by the university whereby students are supposed to have resumed face-to-face on-campus studies. However, I must emphasize that because of the nature of Dell's, and what I mean by this is that a large proportion of our students are actually not based in Hong Kong and therefore subject to other requirements. So for the past at least 2 years that I can remember, we have had special approval from the university to do our classes in hybrid mode. Okay, so if you are still unable to leave your country or your place of residence and come to Hong Kong, you don't have to worry because, for instance, in this semester, right, Dell's subjects are continued to be offered on a hybrid mode. So you can still attend classes even though you are not in Hong Kong. But of course, having said that, by the time you guys join us, it will be in September and only God knows what's going to happen then. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. But for now, rest assured that COVID is no threat to your ability to pursue a Dell's degree. Okay. Right. So finally, moving on to entrance requirements. Okay. So this is very important because we get a lot of applicants, which is a good thing. At the same time, we have a quota of approximately 24, which means we have our selection criteria. The most important aspect to filter out applicants would be your working experience, because Dell's is a professional doctorate. So we value the ability of our students to bring their outside work experience into the classroom, right, for mutual discussion and growth and edification. So therefore, as a result of this, we insist that you need to either have a master's degree, of course, right, or the equivalent, right, in a related field, plus 5 years of post-undergraduate work experience, or master's degree plus 2 years of post-master's work experience. So this may sound confusing, but it's actually, if you think about it, it's actually, basically it just means that you can either have just gotten your master's, but you may have worked for a long time before you got your master's, more than 5 years. Then you can join us directly after your master's. Alternatively, if let's say you have finished your master's straight from school, so you did your bachelor's and then you did your master's, right, without work experience, then you will need just 2 years post-master's experience. Okay, so a lot of students ask questions about, is this like very, very strict? For example, if I have 4 years, 363 days, doesn't mean I'm out. Okay, so my answer to you is just apply. Okay, because there are cases in the past whereby students may kind of like tangentially or just fail to meet these criteria by a few days or something like that, but they are outstanding in other areas. For instance, they have excellent results or they have other publications and stuff like that, we are more than willing to consider you as well. Okay, so take these as important guidelines, but they are not totally set in concrete, steel, or stone, right? There are ways to kind of like argue for your case, even if you kind of like just about, even if you don't meet this criteria in black and white. Of course, if you fall way short of this, then it's very difficult. So for instance, for example, if you don't have a master's degree at all, then it's very difficult, right? Or for instance, if you have a master's degree, but you only have 1 year instead of 5 years, then it's also, hard to justify. Okay, so I think you get what I mean, right? Okay, so English language requirements. So if you are from a university whereby English is the medium of instruction, then no problem. Okay, that will give you the entry ticket. But if you are from a university whereby English is not the language of instruction, then you need to supply the typical IELTS or TOEFL scores. And as you can see here, for IELTS is overall at least 6.5, with each sub-score at least 6. So that's quite manageable, right? It's not extremely difficult. Or TOEFL, at least 90 for the internet test and at least 575 for the paper test, okay? With minimum scores for writing. So all these are in the pamphlet, right? So don't worry if you miss it out. Okay. And then these are some required documents if we were to apply. So again, of course, it's most of it is just common sense, right? For instance, of course, your transcripts or certificates, okay? And let's see, okay. Yeah, if your transcripts are not in English, then you have to supply official English translated copies, right? If you are from the mainland of China, you need these things, okay? Number 2 is extremely important. I cannot emphasize it enough, right? You need to give us a research proposal, because this is a document which we can use to evaluate whether or not you have the ability to conduct independent research, okay? And it has to be written in English, right? I always tell students it is an advantage if you can show that you have a proposed chief supervisor, which means if you can identify someone you would like to work with, and this relates to whether or not you understand the expertise that a supervisor has. So a lot of times, students will find it much easier if they are able to work in an area which also matches with the interest and expertise of our staff members, right? For obvious reasons. So if you can show that you have a proposed chief supervisor, right? How do you show this? You can, of course, just give us their name, right, in the proposal. Or even better, if you can, for instance, show evidence that you have already contacted the supervisor by email, and he or she is willing to supervise you, then that's even better, right? Okay. So besides that, of course, the usual elements, the project title, objectives, scope, background, methodology, references. So 9 times out of 10, I can say that during the interview, if you're shortlisted, we are going to ask you about the research proposal. Okay. So this is, I would argue, the most important part of the application. A personal statement in English, 2 pages. Okay. 2 recommendation letters. At least one should be from an employer. Okay. And the other one usually is from some kind of academic supervisor in the past, like your previous teacher or something like that. And then list of publications or any kind of academic related projects that you've been involved with. So again, like I said, this one will stand you in good stead, let's say for the entry scholarship, right? As well as for arguing yourself to be a strong case. So number 5 is kind of like bonus points in that sense. Okay. Right. Okay, so potential applicant groups. So this is basically, instead of saying potential, I would say instead that these are basically derived from data. That means our applicants in the past have indeed come from these groups. Okay, so teachers, administrators, okay, from the mainland of China, from Hong Kong, right, teaching English or Chinese or whatever, right? Essentially, you are interested in DELS because you want to advance your knowledge and professional qualification in this area. You are welcome to join us. Okay, practitioners in professional communication. Okay, translators, interpreters. Okay, language and IT fields. So NLP, for instance, natural language processing is a growing field, and some of our students are also experts in that area, and they come to join us. Okay, right. So just a very important note: okay, because we want to avoid potential controversies, right? Just to, as a disclaimer, we are not affiliated with any outside agencies or consultancies that claim to provide assistance in preparing applications, references, interviews, or vetting for recruitment procedures. So if you come across some kind of online agency that claims that they can help you get a place in Dells, okay, do not believe that, because there's no such arrangement between us and any of these external agencies. Okay, I say this because it has happened in the past and we want to avoid it again. Okay, so conversely, that is also implying that you should really try not to engage in any kind of services from any external agents, because at the interview process, we can easily tell whether or not you are the one who wrote the proposal. Okay, so just a word of advice, okay, prepare all these documents by yourself and show us your true capability and potential, and you'll be fine. Okay, so just as an important notice. Okay, and finally, the application period is from now until the 30th of April. So there's still a lot of time. Okay, application will be considered on a rolling basis according to individual merit. So what this basically means is that if you apply earlier, then we can look at you faster and perhaps potentially give you a place, offer you a place earlier. Okay, so don't wait until the last minute. The fee is $450, payable on the PolyU website, the application website. Okay, and lastly, if you have any inquiries of an academic nature, you can talk to me, right? This is my email, dennis.tay@polyu.edu.hk. And if you have any administrative issues, like things like, how do I log onto the website, what materials do I need, that kind of stuff, you can talk to my colleagues, okay? Cherry, Candy, Jody, a very strong team of administrators. This is the email address and the telephone number. And of course, you can also check out our website for the kind of first port of call for information that you may need. Okay, and finally, of course, you're invited to kind of connect with us, regardless of whether you eventually join us or not, right? To kind of follow our social media to get the latest updates. All right, so I think that is the end of my presentation, 32 minutes, and I really want to spend the rest of the time answering your questions. So thank you very much for listening. So now the floor is open. You may wish to, type your questions in the chat box, but preferably you can also turn on your microphones and ask us directly, right? Yep.